You're in the wrong place. So Rob's been talking to you, I think, about customer development, I believe. It sounded like that was what he was talking about. In a lot of cases, the kind of next stage for customer development is this thing called MVP. And it's one of those things that people talk a lot about. And it can be something people get a bit lost with. So what I want to talk about is really how to stop that happening. Cool. So when you talk about lean, when you talk about designing these businesses, you're really talking about product development a lot of the time. And a lot of this has to be based around things like understanding your users, really getting in touch with their needs, understanding their context. And a lot of that comes out of customer development. This is the kind of the core objective of customer development, in my book, is understanding everything you can about customers and the world that they live in. But most of all, I think the important thing here is this last point, is it's something that's iterative, right? It's not something that you do once and then forget about. This whole process, everything about lean, everything about a good design process, everything about user-centered design, all of these processes that have been coming out in the last 50 years, really, is about understanding that product development is, I'm not going to follow this. Find out based on the answers that you get from the MVP why people are behaving the way that they're behaving, if it's unexpected. But I'm going to focus on this MVP thing, and I think the two principles, the two basic rules I think about MVP are why should you be wrong any longer than you have to be, right? Almost certainly, whatever your idea is, it's wrong. Personally, I would rather find out I was wrong now than later. And the second thing about MVP is actions speak louder than words. And MVP is the real way that you can get to that action. So sometimes in customer development, you will get signals that seem positive. People will seem very encouraging. They may even give you commitment. MVP kind of takes that away and makes you focus in on actual action. Now, what that action is can be various things. But the point about MVP is it has to be the minimum effort that you can do in order to test the assumption that you have. Eric calls it the fastest way to get around the build, measure, learn with. And the first step, before you even think about what MVP you're going to build, is deciding what is the riskiest assumption. What is the one thing that if you're wrong about, you have no business. Now, there's a neat little tool that the guys from Lean Startup Machine have started using, which I think is worth publicizing a little bit. And this is just a thing called the validation board. It's a way that they use to keep track of the various different experiments you're doing, the various different stages you're going through in your journey toward building your business and achieving product market fit. I'm not going to go through the full detail of the whole thing, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus just on this bit here. And this is where you think about the business model that you've got, and the knowledge you have of the customer and the problem, and you define the assumptions that you have. And those can be assumptions about profile of the customers, they can be assumptions about the behavior of customers, and they can be assumptions about the sort of expected response that you have when you put a product in front of people, the behaviors that you want to see. So they could be, in the most basic level, are they going to pay for this? Are people going to keep coming back? Can we reach them? And you can sometimes map these assumptions onto some of the metrics that I think Augusto was talking about earlier, some data-driven metrics. But out of all of the assumptions on which your business is based, and there will be lots, there's one that is probably the riskiest right now. Now, assumptions change over time, right? And at each stage, after each cycle in the build, measure, learn, move, you're going to come up with new assumptions, and you need to choose which one is the most riskiest. And then you want to design your experiment in order to test that. And I think this is really important. People are often a bit slack on defining what is a successful validation. So what you want to do is you want to say, okay, this is our assumption, and somewhere in the back of your mind you've got an idea of where your business model is going to work. So you may have an idea that we need to, if our cost of acquisition is going to be roughly this, then we need to get this level of conversion. And this is where you need to set yourself a number upon which you can decide, well, is this a viable business or not? And so you can say, look, if we make someone an offer and less than 75% of people take it up, we're not going to be able to make money. Okay, that's not a viable business. This comes with experience, right? It's not a science, but it's something that you need to really be forcing yourselves to think about and set yourself ambitious goals. And usually you want to define your assumptions something like, out of X number of people, why did this particular action that is important for my business? And when you're looking at your MVP, we talk about currency quite a lot. Now, currency is not just money, right? Currency can be attention. For your newsletter, your download. And obviously the one that really matters is money. Are they willing to hand over cash? So the second point about an MVP is keep it minimal, right? It doesn't even really have to be a product. It can be something very, very, very minimal. But you may not want to commit huge amounts of resources to building a product, but don't skimp on the tools that you need in order to make it measurable. There's nothing worse than building a product and not actually being able to take the conclusions that you need out of it. And the final thing is, just zero right in on the pain that you've identified in customer development. Whatever it was that the customers felt was the real pain in their lives, the thing that's ruining their day, just make sure that your MVP is solving that problem first, front and center, and doesn't get diluted in other areas. That's a real problem for a lot of companies. So I think one of the interesting things about MVP is it's rather a bad name. The problem when you start talking about MVP is people assume that it has to actually be a product. It's not really, it's an experiment. It may involve a product, but it may actually just be a landing page. It may actually be a flyer. It may actually be, it could just be a pitch. You could go and pitch to 10 people and find out if anyone buys. The second point that's really important is it's not an MVP, it's usually a series of MVPs. This is a journey towards product market fit, and you may need to do multiple experiments and keep going back. So don't say we are building our MVP and I think that's the end of it, because the next stage is money. Crucial aspect, you need to test behavior, not words, right? This is where MVP is different from customer development. There should be some action that you want the customer to take in order to show some level of commitment and interest in the product. You can build an MVP focusing on a particular metric. You may want to build an MVP that looks purely at acquisition. So if you put an ad up on Google AdWords, see if anyone clicks on it, that's showing that you can actually draw people in with the way that you're pitching your product. It may be that it's an activation metric that you're chasing, and you can design something based on that. And again, like I said earlier, you need to have validation criteria. You need to say, well, if we're expecting 80 people out of 100 to click on this and only 50 do, well, then we failed, and that's not sufficient. So you need to be hard on yourselves when you're defining those. And then other great things that you can do with an MVP is you can actually use them to find your first customers or find your first interviewees. And I think this is one of the most valuable things that you can do. So somebody has expressed an interest in the product as you've described it or as you've created it. Don't let them go. Rob's the guy who said you should personally email the first 1,000 customers that you have. I fully endorse that behavior. It is your job as a CEO to really get to know your customers, and if they're interested enough to give you some information that allows you to contact them, don't let it go to waste. Email them, ask them what's the use case. I got an email the other day for a product I signed up for, and it was perfect. Apart from anything else, it was lovely to be able to help. But he said, what's the use case that you're having it for? Because the problem with MVP is what you get out of MVP very often is data. You get a lot of stats, you get a lot of numbers. You can say, well, 8 out of 10 people did this, 3 out of 10. But you're not really understanding why, and that's an important point. So if you can use your MVP to capture information that allows you to then go back into talking to a customer about their problem, then that's great. And you can actually, MVP, if it's sufficiently fully featured, it should actually get you a customer, a real customer, not just an experimental one. And then the last point that's kind of tricky is sometimes when you get you'll create an MVP, you actually won't get the results you expected. And you might feel like you're getting a false negative. Did we actually test what we thought we were going to test? Did people just not understand what it was that we did? And I try to recommend to people that although you want to get something out the door quickly, it's kind of worth running it by a few people, doing a few hallway tests or whatever it is, before you just put it out there. So in terms of if it's an interactive product, if there's some interaction involved, do a little bit of kind of guerrilla usability testing just to make sure that people can actually use whatever it is that you're that you're doing, you put the effort into building it, at least make sure that the people who turn up at the site try and use it and actually use it. And to my mind, the very, very best MVP is the one that you didn't even need to build. If you can go into customer development and you can come up with during customer development, you have a hypothesis about potential product or a solution. If you can, before you even build that, you can legitimately go in and pitch that product and get a yes or no. Not a yeah, would you buy it? I think Rob talks a lot about this. But a yeah, here's my money. Or more to the point, nobody wants to give you any money. That saves you the effort of building an MVP and testing hypothesis. So this leads on to the kind of different types of MVP that you can have. So the one I just described is what you might call a pitch MVP. So that's when you clearly define in a face-to-face meeting or a phone call with a customer the problem they have and the solution you've got and what you're going to charge for it. And you see if they buy it. And if they don't, you haven't got a product. If you do that with 10, 20 people and none of them is interested, you kind of want a non-starter. And that's great, it saves you having to build anything. But the ones I'm going to talk about in more detail are these final three. So there's this thing called a smoke test. Now, this is an old technique that they used to use in direct marketing and in various pretty old forms of marketing. And the idea is that you tell people about a product that doesn't actually exist yet. And you see if anyone bites. What they used to do is they used to put ads in classified ads offering a product the days before digital. And they would put it in a newspaper. They'd know what the circulation of the newspaper was and how many people read the classifieds. And they would leave a PO box or a phone number. And whoever responded to that, they would use that as a ratio of interest in that particular product as described. Now, luckily today with Google AdWords and with various things like LaunchRock or Unbounce, you can create landing pages. You can drive traffic to something that looks like a product, and then see how interested people are in that, and use that as a way of gauging the level of demand and the likely accuracy of your product market fit. In physical products, you could create a product box and see what you tout it around to people and see if you get a response. Dropbox famously did it with a video, and all of them are creating the illusion of a product existing and seeing whether anyone's interested in it. Second interesting type is this concierge MVP. Now this has got a lot of different names. Concierge MVP. In UX we tend to call it a Wizard of Oz prototype. I think Lorenzo was talking about prototyping is a lot like this type of method. There's lots of different words for that. I think he calls it a mechanical turk, is that right? Concierge MVP.
Yeah.
And the idea of this is when you don't want to build an entire big technical platform to solve the product problem, you can do it by hand, but hide that from people. So the famous one that Eric talks about is Food on the Table, which is a service to help busy moms take advantage of offers in their local supermarket and feed their family with healthy food. Now, to build the whole infrastructure would have cost a fortune. So what they did is they interviewed people until they found someone who responded to the offer, and then they built the product around them. So they would go and they would interview them about the kind of foods that they liked. They went off to the supermarket, found all the offers, and then came back with lists of menus that they'd created. There was nothing automatic about it. And they charged a subscription. And their test was, if at the end of the first week she still wants to pay for it, then we'll carry on. So they carried on doing that. And the great thing about concierge MVPs is not only are you testing demand, you're actually testing the mechanics of delivering that service. So when you do come to turn it into something that's automated, it's really effective. I mean, Rob is involved right now with his own concierge MVP, which is this product called Dexio. And it's hard work, right? I mean, but it's one of those things it's really hard work, but it's a quality problem to have. If you've got people coming on board, you've got so many people interested in your product that it's now taking you all your time to service them, well, then it's worth maybe in the short term you hire someone to just help you with the paperwork, but in the long term, you can really zero in on the kind of features that are important and the kind of people that are responding to that offer. And the other advantage of concierge is that you can interact with the human beings and you can actually ask them and find out what it is about the product that they're finding valuable, and then zero in on that when it comes to delivering features. And the last one is feature requests. Now this is quite often a useful tool if you already have a product out there, or you've built an MVP with very, very minimal features, but you know that it needs more, but you don't know where to start. So one of the things you can do is you can start. It's kind of a cross between smoke test and MVP, another type of MVP. But I'll show you an example of a real one. So the rest of this presentation is just a series of examples about different types of MVP. So if you guys have any questions at this point, or if you have any questions later on, we can go on. Go ahead.
I have a question. Which amount of people is enough to start having an answer? For example, you said something about 20 or 30 people. Someone told me that not less than 100. So I don't know. Imagine that I gather a lot of people and ask them if they like my product. If I gather 30 people, you think I can have a more or less trustable answer about that, or?
I think it's a balance. I mean, if you're actually doing face-to-face pitching with people, it's a very time-consuming process. So, you'll start to feel. I can't say, well, you've got to test 100 and find out. If you talk to 10 people, if your hypothesis is, if I've got the right, I know who my customer is, and I think I'm solving a big problem for them. You go out and you find 10 people, and you're sure that they fit your customer profile. They have this problem. They identify that they have this problem.
I know which people I want to ask.
Okay, so if I said to you, go and give me 10 names, you could go out and see those 10 people, right? You talk to them and you say, do you have this problem? Yes, they affirm they have this problem. Is it a problem that you would pay money to solve? Yes. Okay, well, here's my solution. Will you buy it? No. And if all 10 of them say no, well, there's various things, right? It could be that they aren't the people that you thought they were. It could be that the problem isn't as big a problem as you think it is. It could be they already have a solution that is sufficiently okay. It's not a big enough pain. Or it could be that your solution isn't actually solving their problem. But you'll feel it. I mean, and if you think, if you go to 10 people that you've chosen at random, and none of them have this problem, well, that's 0 out of 10. Then if you go to 15, and you still have none, well, that's 0 out of 15. At this point, you start to think, well, it may be that people have this problem, but if I can't find them, I don't have a business. This is about checking that you have a route to the market. The market may exist, but if you can't connect with it cost effectively, if you have to employ a salesman to go out and speak to 100 people for one lead, okay, if that lead is worth $100 million, maybe. But if it's not, then it's really, it's not worthwhile. That's kind of face-to-face pitch type MVP. If you're doing it with for example, a smoke test or a landing page, that relates to how much it's going to cost you to get traffic to that page. So there are certain sectors in the world where, for example, if you're relying on Google AdWords, it gets really expensive. So, and anything to do with the word insurance, you're looking at $50 per click. So, you need to kind of understand that if I'm getting a conversion of 0.1% and my product is only worth $100, it's just not going to work. The maths don't work out. So you have to slightly leap forward and get an idea of what your business model is and where you're going to generate revenue and where your costs are to get a feel for it. Does that answer your question? 8 minutes, they're all. Okay, so this is a good example of a smoke test. This is a company called Swapping. And they have this idea that maybe there's a business around doing unmoderated usability tests with kids. So people who have products for children, they would put their product up on a page. These guys would have a panel of children they would send to the page, and the children would record themselves interacting with the product and do usability testing. Now, these guys didn't build it. What they did is they put a little link on their website. When you click on it, you get this little page that says, here's our product. They've created a video describing the product. And anyone who's interested in it, they put a price, you notice. Anyone who's interested in it, they fill out a form and register their interest. So they can track how many people arrive at the page, how many people watch the video, and how many people give their details. And then they follow up and they say, why did you do this? That's a really nice little MVP. And the video is just like done with paper. It took them an afternoon. This whole thing took them one afternoon. Dropbox is the most famous one. They built their video, publicized it on it wasn't Reddit, it was the other one. And on Dig, and suddenly found that their list of invitations for beta went from 5,000 to 75,000 overnight. Great, fantastic. $1 billion company. This was a lovely idea that came out of a Lean Startup Machine weekend that we did. This was a team of people who were looking at trying to create a social network for dog owners. And they were looking to try and validate their hypothesis, and they said, well, maybe we should go out and do a survey and ask people. And I suggested to them that maybe that wasn't the best idea, because a survey, you're not really testing behavior, you're asking opinions, right? And remember what I said, you want to test behavior. So what we did instead is I said, okay, well, what are the main features of this product? And they basically did a physical smoke test, a physical landing page. They went to a local park, they put up these posters, they described the features, and then they had a little URL written down there, and they just stood there discreetly, and they watched people, and anyone who tore off a strip, they would go and they'd ask them, and they'd say, what were you expecting to get out of this? So they were able to do a bit of interviewing, but they also were able to say, right, well, in one day we saw 50 people walk past the gate with dogs, and this is how many people tore them off. That's behavioral-based validation. People looked at the product and thought, that sounds like an interesting product. Boom. They could have taken it one step further and actually seen out of the people who tore off the paper, how many of them actually went to the website. You have a question? And this is what I'm saying about your MVP doesn't need to be a product. It could be that. That could not be easy. I'll talk about this one. This was an idea, another Lean Startup Machine, lovely one in Rotterdam. This was. These guys had the idea that they wanted to create a video game that you could play in public when you were waiting in a station if you were bored. Now, very, very difficult thing to prototype. What they wanted to know was, if there were people playing this game in public, would other people be interested in coming up and playing? So what they did is they went and set up a video projector outside near a load of people waiting in line for a nightclub. And they made it look as if these two guys here were playing a game. It was just a game of Pong, But actually what they had is, you can't see it, but actually what it was just a guy on a laptop playing Pong, and these guys were pretending to be controlling the controllers. So look, and every time the ball went wild and the guy lost it, like, oh no. And they had it, and then between games a little note went up and it said, €1 to play, join in now. And they wanted to see whether anyone was interested. No one was. Okay, hypothesis invalidated. They didn't have to build a game. People weren't interested. Kickstarter is nothing but MVPs, right? They are. Zappos, very famous concierge MVP, CEO of Zappos, went and took photos of shoes in stores and said to the owners of the stores, I'm going to post these online. If anyone wants to buy the shoes that you're selling, I will come and pay you full price and send them to you. He put them online, saw what the response was, sent them out, validated that people were willing to buy shoes online on the basis of a picture only if he made the rest of the offer compelling. $1 billion business. This is a company I consulted with. It's an insurance company. They wanted to know whether making it very, very easy for IT professionals to buy insurance, professional insurance, was compelling enough to get them to buy. So instead of having to build a whole new insurance product, insurance is a highly regulated industry, it's very, very difficult to launch new products. We created this page, it had 2 questions, and at the end of that it would give you a quote. And it's a difficult one because it is a regulated market, and we weren't comfortable having a situation where we were offering a product that people couldn't buy. We weren't even sure if it was legal. So what we did is we created this flow. We had 2 questions. We had the quote. There was a buy now button. When you click the buy now button, we had a Visa, a payment page appear, but you couldn't actually pay. The moment you tried to click for actual payment, we had a pop-up that said, I'm really sorry, this product isn't available online. Give us your details and we'll phone you and we can sell this over the phone. It wasn't ideal, but it was a good way of checking that people not only were willing to click through, but they showed some intention to actually pay rather than just clicking buy now. They clicked in the field, start giving us their credit card details. We never captured their credit card details. This is a good example of a feature request MVP. Flingo is an existing product. And as you can see, they have, this is for where you're trying to work out if there's desire to go from a free model to a paid model. They have the basic product, and then they have this little mini feature request saying, you know, I want to sign up for this business, for this, and they show a price. It's very important to show people what it's going to cost. It's very easy to click on something that's for free. It requires no effort. People will do it. Try and make it look like they've actually got to pay. And this just, you know, this allows them to check interest and allows them to build a database of people who are actually interested that they can maybe use for targeting. And then the iPhone. I mean, in some ways, I don't know if you guys remember, but you know, Apple do this all the time. You know, they launch products that look finished but lack key features like no 3G, for example, no copy and paste. You know, the temptation would have been to build out everything, and then they found out that yeah, enough people wanted it, enough people hated it without copy and paste, then let's build it. And then the last thing is, if you do find that your MVP invalidates the hypothesis, just think about it carefully before you completely throw out your business idea. Or understand what it is that you're learning from your MVP. So, you know, as I said earlier, once you've come out of an MVP process, you often have a lot of answers about what people did. They didn't click on the link, or they did click on the link. But you don't really know why. All you've got is metrics. Right? What you haven't got is insight. So very often it's worth then taking the next step and saying, well, why? You know, why weren't people doing this? Or more to the point, why were they? But again, you know, there's three questions. Maybe you're talking to the wrong people. So if you spoke to 10 people and none of them had the problem, well, maybe you know those people may know someone with that problem. So in those interviews, you should be trying to find a person with that problem. It may be that the problem isn't what you thought it was. It may be it's not a big enough problem. It may be that there's a sufficiently okay solution. Maybe they didn't understand what it is that you were offering. So yeah, definitely guess you could. But the key takeaway is this. Sorry, that's just a copy of this. I didn't really realise that was a mistake. Okay, thank you. I just stole this from the Lean Startup Machine, guys. But that's the point, right? Don't sell what you can build what you can sell. All right, any questions? Any time?
You mentioned an Apple example with the iPhone. Could you kind of comment on any other MVPs that happen for big companies? Because I would assume that you're kind of risking credibility in your brand if you throw out a kind of a flop in the market.
The second part of your question is something that people often ask me: is, you know, are we going to damage our brand offering a product that we can't, that we actually aren't making? Aren't we going to piss off customers? And my take on that is that, believe me, you're pissing off customers all day, every day. At least this way, you're pissing them off and learning. And I think that's, you know, brand managers have a very, very warped perception about how much people like their brands. And usually it's not as much as they think. And so, yeah, you know, you might upset people. That's why with the insurance company, we kind of were keen to make that offer, because I couldn't get the CEO to believe that it wasn't going to upset. But you're talking about small numbers of people.
Right.
You know.
A cool one I saw recently, an airline launched, and their MVP, you can't build half a plane, but you can build a plane which only flies to a couple places. So they just chose 5 cities which were close to each other, so they were able to service those 5 cities with very few planes. So instead of spending billions to start up, they spent like 10 million to start up. And so it was still like each flight was to a very high standard, it's just they didn't have the scope, right? So it wasn't doing a crappy job, it was just doing fewer things. There's a variety of ways you can cut work out.
Yeah. I mean, an MVP shouldn't be shit. You know, I mean, if you can't, you know, it's got to solve the problem. It doesn't have to be pretty. And I think that, you know, it also depends on what hypothesis you're trying to test. You know, I mean, if your hypothesis is, you know, for example, Zappos, the MVP wasn't the website, the MVP was the service. So yeah, they made that work. That's it.
Not just the concierge, whether
it's basically it's faking it. It's basically doing all the things that you would normally do with a big back-end technical system, doing them with human beings because they're nice and flexible. So with Rob's case, you know, he's built a product that allows you to create a profile online, and you know, in theory, yeah, eventually you'll be able to create a profile automatically. You'll be able to upload files. At the moment, Rob does it by hand. He will upload the files for you and make it look good.